Proverbs 27:6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Keep this in mind when you're going through periods in your life of correction. This correction may happen inside the world and it may happen inside the church. Either way, we have to be aware that sometimes those who love us, who were sent by God to help us, to get us on the right path, that what they have to say and how they say it is going to be hurtful. It's going to hurt. It's going to become a wound. And this wound, once exposed, God can heal. Jesus can come in and mend that wound, basically. But the kisses of the enemy, the enemy will literally, and I've seen this in my own life, both in the world and in my spiritual walk, where people will literally put their arm around me while they're plotting against me. And this doesn't have to be a literal plot, although I have definitely experienced a literal plot where they were planning to set me up, plan to, hurt me, whatever the case may be, but they pretended to be my friend while they were doing it. In a spiritual sense, people have put their arm around me, pretending that they are leading me to truth and righteousness, but the truth is they don't even have that truth and righteousness themselves. So they are basically these people putting their arm around you, kissing you. This is symbolic of kissing, affectionate, loyal. All the things that would come with such a intimate type detail is kissing. And we're not talking about in a sexual sense, that kind of intimacy. We're just talking about the intimacy of a friend, of a church, sometimes we even have that with our coworkers and people we know in the world, our family members, things like that, where they'll literally put their arm around you and lead you to the edge of a cliff, and not even walk off the edge with you, but there you go, right over the edge. Sometimes they literally are walking right off the edge with you because it's like the blind leading the blind. But verses like this you have to take into great consideration when it comes to the corrective side of your walk. John 7:24, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. If you're looking at John 7, it's actually talking about matters of the heart, because this is where it is symbolically breaking down the issue of circumcision. And we know that Christ preaches the circumcision of the heart. So this means cutting to the heart and healing it, purifying it, fixing it. And in this case, we are told, judge not according to appearance, but judge this righteous judgment. The church and many believers want to instantly reject any correction because they believe the lie that the verse in scripture that says, judge not lest ye be judged, is regarding all matters. And there is too many scriptures otherwise that say that is not truth. They don't read the entire context of the chapter and what's going on to understand what that false judgment or unjust judgment was. There is a difference between righteous and unrighteous judgment, and these are the warnings that we are given. But this does not mean that you can take verses about unrighteous judgment and just accuse any judgment against you as unrighteous, because this is not fact. Righteous judgment literally can wound like a faithful friend. So we have to be very, very careful. Jude 1:21 through 23, I think I'm going to read here. Keep yourselves in the love of God, looking for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ unto eternal life. Now, what is about to be said next is included in this love of God, looking towards the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ. And it's important that you remember this. Because then it says, as part of this love of God, and of some have compassion, making a difference. It is through this gentle speech that we always seem to expect to come to us. This gentle speech seems to be the church's belief that that's the only way a child of God can address you, for them to prove that they were sent by God and that they are expressing the love of God. But keep reading. Jude 1:23 says, and others save with fear, pulling them out of the fire, hating even the garment spotted by the flesh. In other words, these people who were put on this earth and prepared by God to provide righteous judgment upon their brethren and other people of the world and situations going on in the world and so on. Churches, groups, just these influencers, whatever we come across that we are either inspired by God to say something to them because God put them in our path for that reason, or just to pray for them, or a combination of both, whatever the case may be. I typically try to pray for anybody God has me speak up to. But some people, it says that these righteous judges, these magistrates that have been given the authority and the dominion through Jesus Christ by God himself, who were prepared for this moment, they will go to some with compassion and some saving with fear. It will be a harsher, like a wake-up call when you blow the trumpet or your alarm clock goes off in the morning. Is it peaceful? Is it quiet? No, it jolts you out of your sleep. Does that alarm clock hate you? I mean, some of us think it does, but you know what I mean. Or if you yell at your child because they did something that could have seriously cost them their lives, walked out into the street without looking and a car almost hit them and you grabbed them and you yelled at them. And first you were panicked and you yelled and you tried to warn them and don't ever do this again. And then came the fact that the child realizes they love me. That's why they did this kind of thing. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't always come in rainbows and butterflies, this correction. Well, let's see how this goes, because man, am I being threatened, and is my phone giving me trouble just trying to get this message out. Now, this is not your typical lesson from me. This is not going to be a Bible study where we open up the Word. This is about spiritual discernment. This is about knowing in this world and also in our faith that we need to really test the spirits and pay attention to what's going on, because the things of the world also draw us away from God. Now, this is fact. There's no way to deny this. You cannot say that things that you follow and observe through social media, things you observe and follow in politics, things you observe and follow in entertainment, regardless of what it is, even in your own religion, what you believe in, the doctrines you chase after, you can't say that none of that has any effect. In fact, it all has effects on where you are before God. With that being said, just like our Father in heaven, I'm no respecter of persons. We are one of two kinds of people in this world. We are either guilty or not guilty before God. We are either sinful or we are cleansed of sin. We are either humble or we're not humble. You get my point. As far as human being goes, there is no race. There is no color. There is only good people and bad people. And this happens in all races. It doesn't matter. Now, this subject here does have to do with race. And so this is a very, very delicate subject that a lot of people don't want to get into, at least not in the right way. And a lot of that reason is because of concern on how it's going to be received. And I know that I have already been received very negatively by some people by this. But I call it out as it is. It is righteous judgment against somebody that was, his motives for bringing race up on social media were highly questionable. I could go through this long spiel like I had planned to kind of describe my background, how I was raised, what beliefs my family did and did not have towards racism. I'm not even going to do that, because if you don't want to hear a person of a certain color speak about other colors, or whether it's me speaking against Asian, black, white, and I don't mean against, I mean about, I should say about, or you don't want to listen, if you're the type that doesn't want to hear a black man speak against things that the white man does, or an Asian speak against things that the Indian does, or you know what I mean? Like if you belong to a particular race and you close off any information given to you by another person just because of their color, you're not going to receive the message anyways. So you don't care already if I was raised without this hate and bigotry and racism, which is ironic because of the fact that I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where we are led to believe it was even stronger then. And yet I didn't grow up with what we're seeing in the world today. And so what happened to me on social media and me calling somebody out is a very big deal to me, because we need to be very aware of the people we're believing and why we're believing. So I'm just going to lay it out there. This is what happened. This is the video. So it is a black male. He is an attractive man. He appears to be, even though the video was up close like this, he appears to be strong in stature, probably tall, if not athletically built, then a larger size, large enough that it would, I think, at least this is how it looked in the video, demand authority, or like, especially speaking as a woman, if you were out in public with this individual, you would feel safe and secure because they look like they could handle, if something was to go wrong, that they could defend you and they could help you. So this man had not really said any words in the video. He used his expressions to get his point across, but the video had writing through it. So a little message would pop up here, you know, over there, and you would read along as you pay attention to his bodily reactions to what the video is talking about. And with that being said, what the video entailed was this black male was heavily insinuating that he was racially profiled and aggressively treated because of his color by a police officer. So in the video, we have a male, black male, who is definitely appealing. His looks, he's a good looking guy. His stature, like I said, demands respect, authority, and even makes you feel safe and secure. I don't know what kind of following he has, so I don't know how all he uses his charisma, but he's somebody that you would be drawn to and believe anyways, just based on kind of some of this information alone. And what he was saying was that he was driving through a town, and the gist of it was that he got pulled over, and that he was very aggressively treated by this police officer. He didn't give much detail other than that. And it was said somewhere in the video that after showing his identification, he flashed, after being treated aggressively, flashed his, ID at this officer. And the officer, upon seeing, I guess, that it was some kind of government identification with an eagle on it. I don't know what that means. I don't care. I don't know what branch that means. I don't know if that means any kind of federal government. I don't know if that means federal government at all. I don't know if it means marshals. I don't know if it means FBI. I don't know if it means whatever, but people in the comments were implying that it was some kind of federal agent. He, in the comments, though he was responding to people, was not denying these suggestions that that's who he is. He wasn't denying it. So he was going along with the image he created that he is some kind of federal agent, federal officer. And he was implying by saying that he flashed his badge at this officer who was racially profiling him. This was what he insinuated, which he further backs up once him and I start communicating. He was stating that once he flashed his badge, or not badge, but he called it special ID, that special ID, he called it, that this officer instantly quit being aggressive and racially, like being a racist basically towards him, and instantly started giving him respect and basically kneeled before him. And so in so many terms, if we want to look at this as a spiritual, as somebody submitting to a higher authority, that basically this officer did a 180 and started giving this man reverence. Now, I'm going to say this. Okay, this is a quick little addition that I'm slipping in between two reels here. When I was paying attention, going through my editing on the last one, I made the comment that this officer was implying that he was pulled over and was aggressively being treated by this police officer, and that when he flashed his badge, that the officer instantly began giving him respect. Now, I'm going to say this. This also happens between white police officers and white people that they pull over. By the way, it does happen. Let's not be ignorant to act like it doesn't happen, to where this is not an issue of racism at all, but that the officer is just abusing his authority and his power. So even though what this man is saying in the video heavily implies that it was a racist move and that it was only his authority that got him out of this racism, let's not be ignorant to also know that this could also happen between, say, a white officer and a white person, where we even have videos of white officers beating the crap out of white people. So let's not make it dead set that, hey, this is what this man is saying. Only mention this to bring up two issues. One, that this kind of authority being expressed in abuse of power from a police officer or anybody else in a position of power, it could literally be your boss. It could be anybody who is in a position of power. They are also known to do it against their own people, if you will. But let's just say, for the sake of this video, in this case, that doesn't apply, because later on he does imply heavily that this was a racial issue. But I just want it to be known real quick that this can happen, where this authority is demonstrated in this abuse of power on even people of the same race, or it could be another race other than, in this case, it was a black male. So let's keep all of this kind of stuff in the back of our heads when we are being presented with these type of scenarios that are supposed to trigger us to react. I am going to say that initially, already at this point, is very sus. Like, it's very suspect that this man is even telling the truth. I'm not saying he's not. And I'm not saying racism doesn't exist. It actually exists against all of us. Sometimes the agendas of the demonic powers of this world want to pinpoint one over the other. But even the elderly deal with unfairness when it comes to jobs and employments. Women, they deal with this kind of discrimination. Look at what's going on with Asian people today because of all of this propaganda regarding China, where people are literally hating an entire race of Asians. They may not even be Chinese, but they're being hated because of all of this hate and this division and this strife that's being shoved upon us daily, especially through social media. So we have to be very careful, and we have to be very careful that deceivers who are trying to add fuel to this flame, deceivers are going to appear as good people. It doesn't always come out in the form of vile hate speech and all of this. They literally, look at the verses I just read you, where the wounds of a faithful friend versus the kisses of the enemy that deceives you, who will literally put their arm around your shoulder and lead you right to the edge of that cliff or right into that fire, and then not even help you get through it. But I already questioned his legitimacy about being this special ID agent who caused this officer to no longer racially profile him. The reason why I question the validity of it is because I knew judges and police officers and stuff before, when I was, in my 20s. And then again, in my 30s, late 30s, I was in school for forensic criminalistics. And with that comes federal agents, ATF, lawyers, judges, police officers, campus police, which are also part of the city police. You rub shoulders with people and you get to know people. And I got to say, in all of that experience in 20 years, I've never, ever, ever known a agent, a government official, try to become viral on social media and draw such attention to themselves and like, you know, make it obvious that they have this special ID. And if you're in that industry, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you know, that's very bizarre behavior, and that typically that kind of stuff, especially if you're in a high authoritative power position, for the safety of yourself, your coworkers, your family, your friends, things like that, you kind of stick within your own circle. And this is not something you boast, but this man was definitely boasting this authority that he had. So I question his validity, but for the sake of this video, and here's the bad part, is that if he's race baiting and the whole thing is a lie, that's worse. That's worse to me than any actual racism that could have occurred. Not that I'm condoning racism at all, but I'm saying, could you imagine creating false racism just to feed an agenda and to give yourself clout on social media and gain a following and use racism and pretend to be a victim? That to me is just as vile as a woman who accuses a man of doing something to her body, so to speak, without being too vulgar online, and it being a lie. Or the woman who accuses a man of abusing their child because they want custody and he didn't do anything. To me, those are all equally as vile, and even more so vile than the person who really does commit those things, because that's just disgusting. It's all based on being a false witness and a liar. It's just, to me, the worst of the worst. But for the sake of God and for the sake of argument and for the sake of this lesson of discernment, we are going to say that this man is legit. We're going to say that he truly is a federal agent or government official or something with authority high enough to make a police officer turn on his heels and bow before him. We're going to say this man is not telling a lie. We're also going to say it's true that this man really did experience racism. Here's where I had an issue. Outside of the suspicious behavior already on his part, I confronted the man, because here he is accusing a police officer of using his position of power to gain leverage and authority and you know, power. Basically, he literally did the same thing by flashing his badge. And I called him on it, and I used some kind of term. I can't remember everything I was saying. I did try to go back and pull up the conversation so that I could bleep out the names and actually pull up the conversations. And apparently I've been blocked. So apparently he didn't like what I had to say when I followed up and called him on his garbage. But here's what happened. I called him out on it because his video was very arrogant. It was very egotistical. His whole attitude and demeanor, expressing his authority to this other police officer, his whole behavior was almost as vile, if that makes sense. There is nothing okay with abusing your authority, no matter what. Like, it's not okay. And we, even in a spiritual world, have to remember this. If we have discernment, if we have authority to judge, we need to make sure and be in prayer that we are doing it righteously. Well, I called this man out in righteous judgment because for so many reasons and things that he was doing in this video, I could see his heart and I could see the intent behind his heart, and it just called out to me, and God put this video in front of me, and I just felt I had to say something. And then that feeling was so strong, I felt I need to also address this issue. And I responded to this man in my own words, and I basically addressed his whole using his get out of jail free card, that we have no evidence on our part that any of it really occurred. And I can't remember verbatim what I said, but it was questioning his motives and questioning the validity of his intentions of his heart, basically. And it was calling out his own arrogance and egotistical mannerisms, and he did not care for that, which I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Nobody likes correction. But he didn't want to reflect on that. Instead, he wanted to come across, remember the verses I read about some you come in, comforting in that kind of manner, and some you pull out of that fire with fear. And I wouldn't even say that me being blunt and bold, as is spoken in John 7, when Jesus said, do righteous judgment, and even the vipers, or I should say the Pharisees, they were astonished that Jesus spoke so boldly, which means he spoke aggressively towards them. But we don't want to pick up that kind of language in our Bibles. We just imagine Jesus is speaking like some kind of soft-spoken hippie throughout the entire scriptures, and that's not true at all, because I do recall Jesus called them vipers and hypocrites. I do recall that Jesus said you would be better to have a millstone tied around your neck and thrown out into the sea. That's pretty violent. I do recall he whipped at the money changers and flipped tables, set loose the doves. So I do believe that at one point he was so frustrated, he said, how long will you have me suffer with you? Paul, everything he wrote to the churches was just calling out all of the evil that they were doing before God in the name of Jesus, in the name of God. So we just have this image in our head. It's supposed to be Goldilocks, porridge, fine and dandy, and it's not scriptural at all. And we use verses like, judge not unless you be judged, and they don't even pay attention to what's going on in those scriptures to understand what they mean in the first place. So we have to be very, very careful not to just dissect scripture in a way that never convicts us. Because like I showed you in those verses, we are supposed to approach both sometimes with compassion and a light spoken, and other times, you've had those warnings and you still won't listen, so you need to be shooken up. And the whole purpose is not to put our arms around you and lead you to the edge of that cliff or right into that fire, like what the kisses of a friend are doing. So I knew he would not like my calling him out, especially publicly calling him out, what his intentions were. And so he tried to play the good guy, and, he pulled the whole, oh, I could block you, but instead I'm going to use this moment as an opportunity to educate you, basically, was his response. And then he basically boasted his own goodness and tried to accuse me of not being kind or loving, in his own words, and explains even further to confirm what I initially thought, that he was using this video to claim that he was racially profiled and aggressively attacked, if not, he didn't say physically, but verbally and through emotions, by this officer who pulled him over. And he confirmed my suspicions that that's what his video was actually saying, because of the fact that he literally said so when he told me that, to educate me, because I said he was just using his authority to get out of a position and a ticket that he might have rightfully deserved. His response was, let's just put it this way, I was pulled over for being in the wrong place, something like that. So he again inferred heavily that he was dealing with racism and that he was being attacked by an officer verbally, but he would not say so exactly, which I find ironically that he keeps choosing to use words that if he wanted to manipulate them a different way, he could, without literally just coming out and saying it. So again, this is even more suspicious. This is even more suspicious of a person who is trying to line something up in a way that would cause people to view it one way, where he could come off and try to profess like, oh, I didn't really say that. You know what I mean? Like, this is how a deceiver will work. This is how actually a lot of secret societies will work, where they can lie, but it doesn't really come off like a direct lie. If you believe that's what I said, then that's on you kind of mentality. So I've already got this guy's number. I've seen him. He's a dime a dozen, right? Let me tell you. Couldn't let it go. I could not let this go. And it wasn't pride. It was, this man needs to be put an example. All of these social media influencers who are using race baiting and using falsified or heightened scenarios and elusive speech to imply something that causes division and hate, but without providing proof. He provided zero proof that he's who he says he is. He provided zero proof that this officer attacked him. No video. You're going to tell me that you're a government official. You don't have a camera in your car? Dude, it don't make no sense at all. That you're in a position where you could actually, your life could be in danger and you don't keep a camera in your car. And we're in a world today where everybody has a camera in their car. So you have no evidence, like physically, that, video to prove that this officer did that. So you got two things. Let's talk about the third thing here. He made this video, caused a lot of people in the comments to give him hoorays and accolades, regarding the fact that he stood up by flashing his authority at this police officer, which caused the police officer in turn to give him respect and reverence and basically bow to him, and switch that role of power, so to speak, from what was implied the white man or anything other than a black man to the black man. So he did all of this, is subliminally being planted into our heads in his video. And the world is not even waking up to this, okay? But he provided not only no proof by video that the officer did that, he didn't say in this video what the name of the police officer was who did this. We're talking about a hate crime by a police officer supposedly occurred. And the man that it occurred to is a man that claims to have more power than the police. This man didn't expose the police officer's name. He didn't expose the department that the police officer was out of. He didn't even so much as state the town, let alone the state this occurred in. He provided nothing to prove or back up his claim. And here's where I have a huge problem. This man riled up a bunch of people on the grounds of discrimination, racial profiling, officer abuse, when we're already in a very volatile situation in the world regarding this. And this is what I said to him. Not so many words, but I questioned him. Because he comes back at me with the accusing me, my heart's in the wrong place. He was a victim, basically. He was profiled, racially profiled, and that's why he was pulled over. And that's why he had to use his special ID to get out of it. And I questioned him, all right, tell me then. Did you use your special ID? Did you use this authoritative position of yours to expose who this was? To bring awareness, to help your brothers and sisters, uncles, cousins, the people of that community? Did you report this officer? Did you report the department that he comes from for this racial profiling and hatred? A man of your position that caused an officer to kneel before you. Did you use your authority and power in any way to help the black community? As a black man who was profiled, who was given, whether it was by the powers of this world or God himself, was given the power and authority to make a difference in this world. Sir, did you use your special ID and your arrogant attitude and your egotistical mannerisms? At one time, did you use them to help the people and to expose the corruption in that so-called town that you so-called drive through, where you were so-called racially profiled and abused? This emotional abuse you went through. Can I insert cricket sounds here? I don't have any dubbed cricket noises, but people, do you see my point with the man who cried wolf? He is using something in this world he used it for his own gain. He did not flash that special ID as he claims to bring justice to you or me and to clean up our communities and to make the world a better place and to get rid of all these perversions in the world, such as racism and, hatred towards a person, this profiling that supposedly happened. He did nothing but use his card based on his own account and the story he gave, which we're going to take it for truth. He did nothing but use it to save his own skin, to reverse that power and that authority to himself, in which he turned around and abused it himself. Do you see what I'm saying? And not only did he abuse this authority, but in my impression, seeing the actions of his heart, he did this for social media, to go viral, for notoriety, for praises of men. He was being applauded. Yay! I can't applaud with one hand because I'm holding the camera with the other. But he, yay! I don't know how to do it. Yay! With words. He did it for self. Like, it all boils down to self. And if you can use a subject that really triggers a response in people, you are more likely to get more comments, more shares, go viral. And then what happens? Cha-ching, 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 the money starts rolling in. So what was the true intentions of this man's heart? When I asked him these questions, his response, do you think he answered a single one of those questions? Do you think he then exposed the name of the police officer? Do you think he used that opportunity to expose even the town or even vaguely the state this occurred in? None of that. Did he say, no, I did. I went and filed a report afterwards. I went to the head of such and such. And did he say any of this? Did he back up any of that? Did he profess to have turned around and helped his brothers and sisters from this corruption that was occurring in this community when he was aggressively targeted, he said? No, his response instead was to accuse me of being a Christian, which ironically the heathen did in Antioch, which Paul and Peter, I've got a video about that. Am I supposed to be a Christian? Watch it. And if you know me, you know I don't profess such things. So I already knew he had no spiritual discernment because he just used what his worldly knowledge of is what I should be, because we know he went and he looked at my profile and saw I have scriptures and teachings posted. He just accused me of being a Christian and one who didn't know God at that, which he's none of these things. And then he turned around, and it's that role reversal, transference, the finger pointing at you while three are back at yourself. He then tried to basically accuse me of only, I'm attacking him because of my own demons, was his excuse. And of course, you have people also of color are defending him, even though they can see with their own eyes I'm asking these questions in their defense. Did you do this for your people? Did you stand up to it? Did you report it? Did you, what did you do other than save your own skin? And they still want to defend him. And this is the sad reality of this world today, that people are respecters of persons. God's no respecter of person. You see, they respected him more because they shared the same skin tone. And I'm the one that's truly respecting them, trying to expose the people who are pretending, putting their arm around them. And those kisses, those sweet, sweet kisses. And I'm getting accused, and I'm like, honey, you can't even see I'm here defending you. And this isn't to speak of everybody, because there was quite a few people on this conversation, and I'm only speaking of the person that whose video it was, and there was only one or two people at the point until he blocked me that were also defending him. Everybody else kept their silence, whether they just didn't see my comment or whether they saw the truth in what I was saying, I can't say. But the reality is I was coming to their defense and the defense of the world and the state of the world that we are living in right now. And so the world really needs to wake up to this. We need to wake up to how we're being programmed to hate each other, how we are being tricked into divisions. if the racism that he experienced actually occurred, he saved his own skin. He used neither his experience nor authoritative position to help anybody else but himself, which means not only is he still collecting his probably fat paycheck, if it's true what he says he is, not only is he probably collecting his fat paycheck still, but he's still abusing that authority the same way he accused the police officer, and not using his authoritative position to make a change in this world for the positive. He's only worried about his own self, his own notoriety, his own clout, his own, hopefully I go viral on this and the money comes in, his own, I mean, we kind of call it a get rich quick scheme, whatever. But like, I see through his heart. And it's funny because he tells me, I wanted to go back so bad and like copy the conversation we had so I could show you, look, this is what was said. But, you know, block out the names because I didn't want to post the video. I don't want to drag him through social media in the same way. He's before God. It's all before God. But ironically, I couldn't even find in my notifications both people who were attacking me, him and this woman who was defending him. All of a sudden I couldn't even find those notifications, which means he blocked me. So he started off saying he's the bigger, better person because he won't block me. He'll use this to educate me. But when I called him out, what did you do? But then save yourself. All of a sudden I'm blocked. So this is just his own heart being convicted. He accused me of, you know, walking with demons while he's this good guy with a halo, and then blocks me, so I can't say anything else. So basically that's just somebody rejecting their judgment upon them, a righteous judgment, and before God I call him out on it. And this is definitely going to be a trial he's going to face in the near future, I guarantee, because it's been exposed. His heart and how he's dealt with it has been exposed. And not just before, you know, him and God, but before whoever was there paying attention. And hopefully this is going to be a wake-up call for those people that you can't just trust anybody who is putting information in front of you. You can't just believe that just because they have a beautiful face, because they look strong and authoritative, because they hold a position of power with a special ID, because they look commanding, because they look safe and secure, because they look like they could protect you if you needed to be protected, because they look strong and mighty, because they talk sweetly and softly to you while accusing anybody who harshly and boldly speaks against what they're doing. Oh, that's the enemy. This isn't truth, and this isn't what your Bible says. So you need to be very aware, church. You need to be very aware of all the influences that are out there that are trying to draw you into this strife and division, because we are supposed to be uniting. We are supposed to be healing. We are supposed to be bringing God back into our lives. And in that, there is no respecter of persons. You are either guilty or not guilty. You are either holy or unholy. You are either a saint or wicked. You see what I'm saying? We are either one or the other. We are either adulterous or we are in it for God, full heart, wholeheartedly in submission. And that's all God sees. And that's all we should see in each other. So stop letting this world corrupt you. You know, put down the politics for a while. Put down the race baiting for a while. Put down the entertainment of the world for a while. Put down even the teachings that you've been chasing after your whole life in the church. Put all of it down. Put down your church. Put down your pastor. Put down politics. Put down the world. Put down entertainment. Put this all down and aside. And I implore you, get alone with God for a while and get to prayer, because you need this spiritual discernment. You need to be able to tell when you are being attacked in the world, because it doesn't always come to you in the form of religion. You see what I'm saying? Be alone. Jesus himself left the people for a while. And he would go up to the mountain. He would go out into the wilderness. He would go into the garden. He would go and be alone with God, and he would pray quite frequently. He would come back to the people, teach them, and then he would go back to be alone with the Father. This is what we need to do. As followers of Christ, it says, pick up your cross and follow me. You need to find some time to be alone with God so he can get into your head and start cleaning up all the parts in us where we've been corrupted by the world, because the world is even in our religion. It's in Christianity. It's in your teachers. The world it's in everything. And you're going to be surprised what God is going to show you if you go directly to him and spend some time alone with him. You hear? I pray somebody hears this message, because what people like that on social media are doing is very dangerous to us as a society. So I do hope that you're doing well. I do hope that God be with you, that he give you strength, that he encourage you, that he just lifts you up out of the muck and mire, out of all the deception, in all kinds of areas in your life, wherever that deception may be, that he just draws you out of it. I pray for his protection over you while he does this. While you're purified, while you're refined, that you are given the strength to endure, because it is, quite frankly, I can't even, it's astronomical what knowledge you don't realize you could have if you would only just go to him and trust him. So I pray for strength through Jesus Christ. May you be lifted up.